I rise as Victor Ndoma-Egba, representing Cross River Central. Cross River State is the immediate victim of the injustice and the high-handedness of this issue of Bakassi. And when the distinguished Deputy Senate leader referred to the minority of minorities, they reside in Cross River. Helpless, hapless, unprotected, and nearly hopeless people. I rise to second this motion, ably moved by Senator Ningi, who has consistently demonstrated a pan-Nigerian view and a pan-Nigerian attitude. I want to commend you. You are indeed a Nigerian. Mr. President, I was in this Senate when the process of seeding Bakassi commenced. It was in the 5th Senate. And I remember that Senator Bakassi Ewa Henshaw, a very distinguished senator and a very distinguished Nigerian, then represented Cross River South, where Bakassi belonged to. And I recall that there were 3 motions moved by Senator Bakassi Ewa Henshaw with me co-sponsor, urging the federal government to tarry a while and consult with this parliament. That never happened. Mr. President, Bakassi was seeded by the federal government of Nigeria in spite of this Senate that has powers to ratify treaties. Bakassi was seeded in spite of the people of Bakassi who kept protesting, but nobody listened because they were a minority of minorities. Bakassi was seeded in spite of the protests of Cross River State. Mr. President, at the time of the actual handing of Bakassi, Cross River State had no governor because the election of Senator Lee Elimoke had been nullified by the Court of Appeal. We had an acting governor. And I cried myself hoarse that the seeding of Bakassi will come with very severe security challenges. Please tarry, slow down. Let us have a substantive governor in place, a substantive governor with enough constitutional authority to meet whatever challenges that will arise from this issue of the handing over of Bakassi. Bakassi was handed over with an unelected governor, an acting governor in place at the time it was handed over. I asked the question, what was the hurry? The issue of Bakassi must go down in Guinness Book of Records as the fastest compliance with the judgment of the International Court of Justice. There are judgments that were passed in 1930, 1940 that are still pending. What was the hurry? Why were the people of Bakassi so unimportant in this decision? Why was this Senate so unimportant in this decision? We must ask questions. We must continue to ask questions. Mr. President, I said I come from the state that is the biggest victim of the seeding of Bakassi. When Bakassi was being handed over, during the process, my brother and friend, Chief Bayo Joe SAN, assured Nigerians that Nigeria was not losing a single oil well as a result of the loss of Bakassi. Chief Michael Andoka an indigene. Sorry, sir. I hold that back. Then Attorney General of the Federation, at the handing over ceremonies, again assured Nigerians that Nigeria will not lose a single oil well as a result of the loss of Bakassi. Well, in many ways, Bakassi is now part of the Cameroons. But the 76 oil wells that were ascribed to Cross River State when Bakassi was part of Cross River did not move in the same direction as Bakassi. Bakassi went in one direction, the oil wells went in another direction, and that has been confirmed by the Supreme Court of Nigeria. We accept the judgment. We are a law-abiding people. Cross Riverians are famous indeed for being law-abiding. We respect the judgment of the Supreme Court. We accept it. But I would like to use this opportunity, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, to make this point. Bakassi was not ceded by Cross River. Bakassi was ceded by the federal government in spite of Cross River. The least that the Nigerian state should do for Cross River is to protect Cross River and compensate Cross River and not punish Cross River. We demand protection of the Nigerian state as people who are legitimately Nigerians. We demand protection. Mr. President, if I went to your cassava farm in Otukpo, do you have the intention of taking that over? Okay, let me put it the other way, sir. If the federal government took the Senate President's cassava farm in Otukpo, the federal government will be under a legal obligation to pay you compensation. The federal government will be under a legal obligation to pay compensation. In our own case, because we are minorities of minority, the lowest of the low, a land that is not just land, is the heritage of a people. It is their history. Their ancestors, their forebears were buried there. We cede the land, and the Nigerian state is quiet, not a word about compensating the people of the state. All that we hear is punishment. Mr. President, if the Nigerian state cannot protect Cross River, let the Senate, to which I belong, protect Cross River. Mr. President, this calls for a review of our treaty-making process. If you look at Section 12 of the Constitution, this distinguished Senate, made up of elected Nigerians, eminent Nigerians, in spite of what some may say, when it comes to treaty-making, is faced with a fait accompli. That is, the executive can go enter into any engagement and just bring the treaty here for us to stamp. In respect of the Green Tree Agreement, which concerns Bakassi, this Senate has refused to stamp it. Yes. So that as far as the constitution of this country is concerned, Bakassi still remains part of Nigeria. So I think that we must take the opportunity of this treaty, of this current constitutional review process, to have another look at the treaty-making process as provided for in Section 12 of our Constitution. Elsewhere in the United States government cannot enter a major treaty without the Senate being part of the process. I think we must be part of the process of treaty-making. There must be that consultation so that we can avoid this kind of complication that we have today. Mr. President, in conclusion, people have said, must we appeal? What new facts do we have? I think our responsibility stops at taking advantage of the window that the same ICJ Act provides. If it allows for an appeal, let us appeal. Let us do what we ought to do. It will be better for us to say we appealed and we did not succeed than to discover that we may have succeeded had we appealed. So let us appeal. But on a final note, Mr. President, I believe that I've been loyal to this country. I believe that I am a patriotic Nigerian. I believe that my people are Nigerians. My people have paid very high price for the unity of this country. The least we ask for is protection of the Nigerian state. At least put us back where we were before Bakassi was seated. That is the least we demand of the Nigerian state. And if you've taken our territory, let us discuss compensation.